Hello and welcome to this tutorial on a quick and easy exposure fix using Topaz Adjust 5. Every now and then, circumstances present us with an opportunity to capture an image, so we react, shoot, and then get home and realize that we could have metered better or more accurately. Instead of deleting the image as unusable, this technique may help you get back the image you visualized, such as this one. I started with this image. This image is the resulting image. So I'm going to show you how I got here with this quick technique. So let's begin. First, we're going to go ahead and duplicate our background layer, just so we have it always there in case we need to go backwards. Next, we're going to go ahead and choose Topaz Adjust 5. And I haven't really found that this technique works in other software, so it's just a special set of clicks that works pretty regularly for me, so I'm just going to show it to you. Under Global Adjustments, we're going to go ahead and hit Adaptive Exposure. And from here, and you know, I don't really slide these. There always seems to work for me when I kind of just do a couple quick clicks. I always land between the P and the O on exposure, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the Adaptive Exposure a little bit. For regions, I go just a little bit to the left of that, so say between the X and the P. And then on contrast, bring the contrast down until I get it where I want. And as you can see, in 3 easy clicks, I've turned this exposure around and the foreground is lightened up and it looks more in par with what I was really trying to achieve. So we're going to go hit OK. Now when I say that I do the same 3 clicks every time, I do the same 3 clicks every time, literally. And it tends to be that it works each and every time. You might need to go a little bit further to the right on the adaptive exposure and then start your sequence going left for the next 2 sliders. But once you've played with it a little bit, you'll find sort of the recipe that works for you. So now that we have an image with the proper exposure, I'm going to do the couple quick edits I did to achieve that final image. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and crop this image because I don't want this random headstone at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. The other thing is that this tree on the right really doesn't add any value, even though I like the fact that on the grass level, you see that there's so many replicating headstones with trees. I just don't feel that it's necessary to have this tree sort of just sticking out in the sky. So I'm going to come and bring this over a little bit. So there we go. And I'm going to go ahead and now to accept my crop, I'm going to hit enter. So this is really where I started in the process. The other thing that I see in this image that I'm not a big fan of is the fact that there's this crazy little stop sign way in the back. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the healing tool, which is, and I prefer the, spot healing tool. So it's the first option. You can either get there by choosing it out of the menu or hitting the J button until you achieve the proper brush. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is make my brush a little bit bigger. And I actually do this by hitting the bracket key, the right bracket key as a matter of fact, so that should be found right above your return key on your keyboard. You can also change the brush size by choosing the brush tool, this one here, and just changing the size by using this slider. So what I like to do when I'm using the brush tool is make it just a tad bit bigger than the thing that I'm trying to brush out. And this would be true of stop signs, dust spots, whatever. So go ahead and get the brush size the way you want it, and then you just kind of hit click and it disappears. Is it perfect? It doesn't really matter. It's so far back in this image that it's kind of unrecognizable once it's completed. The other thing that I see here that I'm not a fan of is the fact that there's the pole for that stop sign. So I'm going to go ahead and just replicate that with grass. And I'm going to call that done, because by the time I'm finished with this image, you're not going to even really know that I may have ever made those adjustments. So the next step that I went through was to go ahead and add tonal contrast. As I've said before, I'm a big fan of the NIC software as well as the Topaz software, so I intermix these as I see fit. So I'm going to go ahead and choose tonal contrast from NIC, and it's in the Color Effects Pro 4 package. And I find that tonal contrast generally does an excellent job straight away of creating contrasty images. And I don't even know that they really need much more help. You can play with the sliders if if you didn't get what you wanted out of it, or say you don't want as much contrast in where the highlights are in the sky. You can certainly fix that by dragging the slider around, but I'm pretty happy with it straight away. So the next thing that I did with that image is to actually use a bleach bypass. And I like this filter because it really takes out a lot of the saturation. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this, and again, same kind of concept. You can change it, you can add or lessen the contrast, change the local contrast. Easily done with the sliders, but a lot of these times I actually don't find that I need to do much. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. All right, so this is now, that has overridden what I had, but I don't want it to be so kind of dark and contrasty, but I wanted the effect. So I'm going to go ahead and just change my opacity a little bit until I kind of get to where I want this to be. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now the thing too that I wanted to highlight is this wreath in the very front of my image with this very small little headstone that's been overtaken by the tree and the tree roots. So the way that I do that is to go ahead and just add a layer mask. So that's this little, it kind of looks like a camera, a square with a little circle in it at the bottom, and we get a layer mask. White reveals. So currently this layer mask is allowing us to see all of the adjustments made through the Color Effects Pro software. But in this case, I don't want the wreath in the front to sort of say, because I think it feels like it's a little bit drab. So I want to actually take the effect of Color Effects Pro off of that one area. So to do that, once you've got your layer mask, and like I said, it's white because I want it to reveal those effects everywhere else, I want to go ahead and pick my brush tool. So on the left-hand column on my screen, you'll see that the brush is here. You can hit the brush tool or just hit the letter B on your keyboard. I want to make sure that my foreground color is black because I want to actually paint in the layer mask with black, which would lessen the effect of the Color Effects Pro in whatever area that I'm painting. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave it at 100% for now and just see what sort of effect I get from that. It might be right, it might be a little bit too aggressive. And I just start painting with my mouse in this one particular area. So as you can see, it's not as contrasty. The green has gotten greener. The red is redder because I have taken it out, the bleach bypass effect, by taking this out. As you can see on our layer mask, I have this little black dot in the corner. If you want to ever bring your layer mask to the forefront of your image, you can go ahead, hold down the Alt or Option key, and then just click, left click in the mask, and it'll come up. This is really helpful when you're trying to do some subtle changes or you want to make sure that something that you've painted is complete. So this allows me to check that I didn't leave any little white stripes or dots within the wreath itself, that I fully covered that inside with the black. So to get rid of it, hold down the Option or Alt key again, and then just left click again, and it takes it back out and brings you back to your image. Okay, so now in looking at this image and comparing it to the final image, I sort of realized that, you know, I'm still a little bit dark and I'm still a little bit too saturated for the effect that I was going for. So to fix that, we're going to come back to our image that we're working on. Go ahead and get rid of the Nik software menu, and I'm going to make a few more changes to this. The first one is I'm going to actually add a little bit more of the bleach bypass effect in, and the way that I do that is just really clicking on the layer and dragging the opacity slider back up so that I'm actually blocking more and more of the layer below. So when I finally get sort of the coloring that I want, and it's okay, I'm good, I have realized that that effect is actually making my image a little bit too dark. So I'm going to fix that in a second. I do want to highlight though that where everything else has desaturated for the most part, my wreath up in the front is still nice and green with a beautiful red bow, and that is because of my layer mask here. Because again, that is fully exposing the layer below. So That's exactly the effect I want. I want your attention drawn down to this one particular headstone while having the viewer realize that the wreath and the headstones are replicated throughout the scene. So to bring up the lightness of this image, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a layer adjustment. So I'm going to select this little half gray and half white circle at the bottom, and I'm going to choose levels in this case. And a lot of times I play with this. Sometimes I'll go with levels, sometimes I'll go with curves. It just is whatever is going to ends up giving me the result that I want in the long run. So the first thing I'm going to do is drag the highlight slider to the left, and this is just going to sort of brighten the image up. And as well as that, I'm going to take the midtones and I'm going to drag those to the left, because that'll also open up the midtones. I don't want to blow out my sky, so maybe we'll go back a little bit to the right here on the highlights and just use the midtone to get the adjustment that we're looking for. All right, that's about it. Okay, great. And the final thing that I like to do is sometimes I'll experiment where I think that I've probably blown highlights in an image after I'm done with my adjustments, just to kind of get the effect that I want. One thing that the new Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud has in it is this opportunity to get back to the Camera Raw filter. And if you can open it in Camera Raw and do all of your changes in a smart as a smart object within that, but I actually find that sometimes working with that is a little bit slower because it's rendering always through the smart object, and so the time it takes to render your adjustments is longer. So I'll often flatten my images and compress or merge visible for layers, and when you do that it takes away the smart object. But one way that you can get back is if you go to the filters. Excuse me, I realize I have to actually merge my visible to actually get those filters. You can't do a filter on a level adjustment layer. So I've gone ahead and I've merged them. You can, I have a key for that, but you can choose layer and merge visible or merge layers. If you want to merge visible while leaving all your sub layers there, you have to hold the option key down to do that. Okay, so we're going to come up to filter, and you'll see here that it says Camera Raw filter, and I think this is just a great trick to get you back into the Camera Raw features, because Camera Raw does a great job of exposing, for me I think it does a great job of exposing highlights that could be blown. So as you can see, it doesn't take much of the highlight slider to show where the highlights are really overdone, overexposed. So what I do is I just drag this a little bit to the left until all of the red disappears. And basically now I've recovered all the highlights in those clouds. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. I bring it in, it's already taken effect, it's a pretty quick tool, and you'll see that I've gotten some more definition within the wider areas here in the cloud cover. So at this point we're essentially done with the image. You may decide to add a vignette or a border or use dark and light and center to further direct your viewer's eyes, but by and large the image is completed. And as you can see, it only took a couple of quick adjustments with some sliders in Topaz to take an otherwise poorly exposed image and turn it into something that you could actually work with. To do these same adjustments within just Photoshop or even within Lightroom and Aperture would have taken a lot more effort. So the Topaz Labs Adjust 5 and that particular set of tricks is a great way to turn an image around. If you're interested, at the end of the video you will find a link which will allow you to take advantage of Roadrunner's discount on Topaz software, as well as provide you the link to finding more information about this particular tool. Well, I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I look forward to seeing you back here soon. Thanks again for watching. For information regarding Topaz Labs software and our discount code, as well as all of the other software tools we use to process our images, follow this link.